Well, welcome everybody to the online program for the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about the stigma of addiction. So far we've talked about like Hollywood movies, just as a measure, a reflection of what the popular mind might think about what an addiction is, what recovery is. Last week we talked about the idea that the public in general, and again, not 100%, but a lot of them have the same beliefs about addiction and recovery. And all of these beliefs are basically rooted in what we're calling the stigma of addiction. And the big piece about the stigma of addiction, that somehow the addict is defective, whether they're defective morally, there's irresponsible layabouts, or they're defective medically, they have a disease or at least a disorder or something. But the key point is they're out of control, right? So we've been talking about these popular sort of non-professional stigma, but the professional field too actually has some, it's kind of interesting when you start reading the research. So a lot of the research is statistical analysis conducted by very good researchers. At any rate, so I've just got a couple here, but here's one, so here's a typical one by a fellow who's got more letters after his name than the alphabet, and he talks about alcoholism as a disease. So that's a pretty common one, right? Yeah, it's all very official, lots of statistics in that one. And we got another one here. I just grabbed these. Just no particular order or reason or rhyme, just they were handy. Addictive drugs and stress trigger similar change in brain cells. Yeah, and nice little graphs, right, and everything. So all bad. And another one, here's another statistical analysis where they've comparing people in recovery who've recovered for 5 years, people who haven't, and they're looking at things like how much drugs are they using, illegal activity, any sort of official psychiatric disorders like anxiety or depression or antisocial personality, which, by the way, that's the nice name we use now for people with sociopaths, right? But hostility, depression, anxiety, problems with socialization, all that. But the point here is that all of these things, they're all negative, right? And so the way you set up a statistical analysis basically is you sort of come up with an idea, say maybe one of the key common features of addiction is that all addicts are incredibly angry, right? And you want to see if that's true, so you use these survey instruments to find out if what you believe is true or isn't true. But you have to make this comment first, so all addicts are angry. And then you you design an experiment to see if this is true, right? So the experiment will prove or disprove, statistically speaking, whether or not your idea is true. But the key here that I want to stress is that it depends on what's the question you're coming into the research with. If you think addiction is all bad and that people who are addicts are defective, you're probably going to start asking questions that have got to do with defectiveness. So that one example, right? So we're going to look at depression, anxiety, hostility, anger. Is the person got antisocial personality? So we're going to look at all of these negative things and not bother to look at any other thing because we're asking this particular question. And it's remarkable how many research studies are actually based on this, what we're calling the stigma or this dominant narrative. And then set this experiment up and then see what happens with the research. And again, it's quite remarkable of all I can't even imagine how many tens of thousands and probably more research articles there are in the addiction field of how many of them have got this sort of this defectiveness slant. And that the solution to recovery then is to get rid of this defectiveness, or at least to address it somehow. Under harm reduction, of course, we would reduce the harm. So we're not even going to have a pretense we're really going to help them go out and transform their lives. All we're interested in is reducing harm. At any rate, that's some official research from people with a long list of letters after their name. Very competent researchers too, by the way, and usually in very big universities. And we'll look at another kind of research next week and just have another look if this other kind of research also has this sort of stigma attached to it.